Good evening, one and all. On behalf of Goa Bird Conservation Network, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you to this year's Carl de Silva Memorial Lecture. It is heartening to see so many nature lovers, conservationists, teachers, students, and so many of my friends gathered here today to celebrate the life and legacy of a remarkable Goan who has dedicated his art and passion to wildlife, the late Carl de Silva. We are honored to have you all with us this evening. To begin, let me introduce the organization behind this event. The Goa Bird Conservation Network, fondly known as GBCN, is one of the state's leading voices for bird protection and awareness. What began in 2010 as a small circle of bird enthusiasts has grown today into a vibrant network of bird watchers, researchers, students, and nature lovers, all united by one common goal: to safeguard the rich bird life of Goa. Registered as a non-profit society, GBCN works closely with the Goa Forest Department and other national initiatives to conduct bird surveys, long-term monitoring, and species documentation. Their efforts have already led to the identification of important bird and biodiversity areas across the state, placing Goa firmly on the map as one of India's richest bird habitats. But GBCN is not just about research, it is also about people, connection, and communities. Through their monthly bird walks, residential bird camps, citizen science programs like eBird, public outreach in schools and colleges, and assistance in events such as the Goa Bird Festival, GBCN has inspired the joy of bird watching to countless individuals. GBCN is also the force behind the Carl de Silva Memorial Lecture, an annual event that honors the legacy of one of Goa's most celebrated wildlife artists and conservationists. Carl de Silva was a highly esteemed Indian wildlife artist and a naturalist born in Goa. He gained recognition for his lifelike and scientifically accurate illustrations featured in ornithological handbooks and field guides. As a staff artist at the Bombay Natural History Society, De Silva collaborated closely with the renowned ornithologist Dr. Salim Ali, illustrating several editions of the Book of Indian Birds, including a complete set of 64 color plates depicting 538 species for the 13th edition published in 2002. He earned international acclaim as the only Indian artist invited to exhibit at London's Small Galleries by the UK-based Society of Wildlife Artists for 5 consecutive years, from 1987 to 1992. His work also appeared in numerous field guides published by Christopher Hem and other international presses, including guides covering birds of the Indian subcontinent, Bhutan, Nepal, and East Asia. Beyond his artistic contributions, De Silva played a pivotal role in Goa's conservation community. After returning to Goa in 1989, he contributed to organizations like WWF and the Center for Environmental Education. And in 2010, he became a founding member of the Goa Bird Conservation Network, a group that grew from his vision and effort. He loved, lived, and breathed every moment of it, said all his admirers, who praised not only his artistic precision, but also his humble character and mentorship to many young enthusiasts in Goa. In honor of this legacy, the Goa Bird Conservation Network established the annual Carl de Silva Memorial Lecture in August each year to celebrate De Silva's passion for wildlife, art, and conservation by inviting experts to speak on themes related to nature and ornithology. This lecture series has become a heartfelt tribute, bringing together storytellers, explorers, and conservationists to inspire the community exactly as Carl de Silva inspired Goa and the world through his life's work. We now take a moment to honor some of our special guests here. May I now request Mabel Menezes to present our guest speaker, Abhisheka Krishnagopal, with a floral welcome. I now request Anjana to present Mr. Vrushal Pendharkar with a floral welcome. I request Karishma to present Mrs. Barbara De Silva with a floral welcome. I request Pragati to present Mr. Omkar Dharwadkar, President of GBCN, with a floral welcome. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Ajay Saxena, former PCCF Goa Forest Department. I request Parag sir to kindly welcome sir with a floral welcome. We also have with us Mr. N.K. Shambhu, Secretary, Science and Technology, Government of Goa. I request Parag sir again to present sir with a floral welcome. It is now time for a very special moment, the launch of a virtual exhibition of Carl's artwork curated by Vrushal Pendharkar. We are delighted to invite Mrs. Barbara to officially inaugurate the website.
Okay, here goes. Oh, this is C. Yeah. So you can talk about it.
Yeah, so you can.
We have Shivani to introduce Mr. Vrushal.
Vrushal is an independent journalist who focuses on the environment, bringing to light stories that connect people, nature and conservation. Currently based in Mumbai, he has been closely engaged with the legacy of the late Carl de Silva. As part of an archival fellowship, Vrushal studied the Carl de Silva papers preserved at the archives at NCBS, and through his work, he helped us understand not just Carl's art but also his passion and philosophy. Vrushal has also been instrumental in curating the virtual exhibition of Carl's artwork alongside Pooja Subhash and Omkar Talwalkar. This online gallery now allows people everywhere to experience Carl's remarkable illustrations and to be inspired by his vision. His work has helped ensure that Carl's legacy continues to reach new generations of nature lovers and art enthusiasts. We are honored to have him with us today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Vrushal Pendharkar.
Sure. Thank you all for coming this Sunday. Yes, it's become an annual event, so probably don't need second invitations. But a matter of great honor and happiness for me to be here. I've been looking at Carl's papers for a while. A little bit through the NCBS fellowship that I was mentioning. Thank you to the guests and GBCN for inviting me to give this with this opportunity to present this. And Parag and his team, Madhura, they didn't sort of blink an eye when I sort of pitched this idea, and they immediately took it on. Sort of doing this. So great many thanks to Omkar and Pooja and everyone associated with this. So I'll quickly walk you through the exhibit. Everyone knows sort of the Book of Indian Birds, Salim Ali's. A lot of us before the pre-internet times and application times sort of handled this book. And that is how we got to know bird identification. So that's what the focus was, bird ID, looking at the bird and getting to know it, identifying it. Perhaps certainly I didn't spend too much thought in the illustration. I admired them, but didn't think of the illustrations too much. But that changed as I got to know, being from Bombay and knowing BNHS and his association, I obviously knew of his work, but never would I have thought that it would sort of, there would be a time when I could actually get to know or look at his papers. And so thanks to Barbara for the donation to NCBS Archives. It's a science archive, and Carl's work are the only sort of artist papers in the archive, which is a bit of a novelty. And then thanks to NCBS Archives as well for hosting this collection. And it's completely digital, part of which we've curated online. It's going to be open now. That is open. It's open until GBCN decides to take it down. So I hope you sort of go up and look at the exhibition. I'll quickly walk you through. There are so many papers. I was just telling Abhisheka that anybody could curate Carl's papers in many ways. A couple of themes that stood out for me is his time with the BNHS was about 8 years, 5 years or so, where he also interacted with Salim Ali and other ornithologists, and actually got time to spend in field with them. So that is one sort of major time in his life that I thought was very interesting, and I'll quickly take you through some of those images. And the other time is, and that's where the exhibit ends, is his sort of backstories and work that one can sort of understand, which I think is the most important contribution, is illustrating for these field guides. This is the BNHS publication, Book of Indian Birds, but he also, like in his introduction, and all of you know, illustrated for Christopher Hen, many guides, even birds of Southeast Asia, groups of pheasants, partridges, things like that, which at an international level, nobody before or after Carl has been able to do. So that is the remarkable sort of achievement for our community. So a little bit of the introduction of Carl, and then we have an introduction of the exhibition as well. But these are the images. This one I'll take you through. This is the first image in the exhibit. It's probably by an 11-year-old Carl, because the date is mentioned here, about 74. So about 51 years ago, Carl, somewhere on his desk in a classroom, drew this crayon painting of a barbet. So even at 11 years, his sort of proclivity towards birds was almost evident. And so birds become a theme very early on. This is a harpy eagle found in the Philippines. Monkey eagle found in the Philippines, but somehow he had some reference to that. So look at, it's very different to the other ones, very pencil sketch, drawing, but very sort of lifelike, very, very sort of all the IDs are very much captured there. But also a child would sort of, capture world around him. So some watercolors, not much has changed in Bombay, the same flooding happens. It probably happened then. This is around still that time of 74, 75, 77. This is classical, what he probably experienced at JJ in his later years when he formally went to study there, which sort of art students do. But I guess art as a period in schools back in the day, these sort of exercises were carried out. So this is around that time of 77, 76 when he was, 8th standard, 9th standard. Couple of charcoal images. These are charcoal photos, which he did actually in 2005. We know because again he dated the art. Perhaps in field a little bit later in life, that is when he did this, or perhaps in Goa, I'm not so sure where this is from. But the other thing he did was the other thing that struck me was that he didn't, in his early time, was hungry to do any kind of work. So he illustrated, Salim Ali wrote a weekly column and he illustrated for him. Sanjay Monga later in Afternoon Dispatch wrote a column, he illustrated for him. He did stuff like illustrating Tinkle comics. Some of them, as you know, comics have themes. So when they had wildlife theme, he collaborated with them to illustrate American cacti in this issue or in this story. So he didn't waste sort of opportunities to illustrate. This is an advert in Times of India of a tourism company, and that he illustrated for. So this was that early time, and then he gets into BNHS and does things like these. And that is where I'm guessing Abhisheka is also going to speak. It's very interesting that a lot of us are now so focused on competent sort of one field at a time, but this sort of using multidisciplinary approach, organizations like BNHS and others, NCF as well now, were very open to communicate what was being done. I don't think he went to Narkondam. These are the Narkondam hornbills. Ajay sir would know them, but they were part of the journal. So he had those sort of times at BNHS. Happened to be at the 100-year centenary celebrations of BNHS, and so curated the cover of the journal But really, his contribution starts when he starts to accompany scientists on field and try to capture what they are studying, and sometimes also lead. So this is a model of a crane that he's made, and scientists used to take them. There were busters and floricans as well that he did, and observe wild behavior to these models. And sort of that is how art and science sort of combine together to come up with new findings. Interestingly, Asad Rahmani, who became later was a scientist at that time when he joined, later became a director, and 25 years later he wrote to him again when Carl was in Goa, saying, "Look, boss, we need you back to do a model again of the floricans, because not much has changed for them, sadly, in that time, and sort of observe new behavior and new insights." So there is those sort of correspondence and receipts and exchange between a lot of these people that Carl happened to have a wide circle of and was in contact with. Just some fun things he did probably on the side. Sitting by a stream in Corbett National Park, he just sort of captured so the scenery around him. Watercolors, somebody was saying they're interested, it's very difficult to do. But also it gave an opportunity to sit like this, and this was actual work for him, being out every day with the scientist. And when the scientists used to capture birds in their mist nets, he would sort of hold them and then come up with these intricate sort of drawings and ID features that again were later published or added knowledge. Yeah. So this is sort of look at that, a very classical way of ID. All your markers are there, but for an artist to capture these are very important. And so he was able to do that. This is a buster display, preening behavior, baiting display. These sort of behaviors he was able to sort of capture, and they later went in reports, the scientific reports. And I believe that this sort of time helped him sort of hone his skills, became very central to what would happen later in his life, which is sort of go on to illustrate for these field guides, which is a little more exacting and arduous sort of process, as you will see in the following few images. So this is the conservation action, field projects, things like that he was part of. He actually curated and sort of compiled his reports. And then the transition happens to illustrating for field guides. He gets an opportunity to go to London and display his artwork there. He made contacts and got in touch with the publishers. But in between, he also had a vast social circle, also was in Bombay, and so he got in touch with film people. And so this is him on the sets of a film called Electric Moon, with some props that he worked as an art director for. And this, any guesses who these two are?
Yes.
Not you, Barbara. Sorry, I'll zoom in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Who would think, right? Arundhati Roy and Pradeep Kishan, they still are friends of Barbara. They were of Carl. So this is Pradeep Kishan on the film sets of, both of them on the film sets that he directed a film of, Electric Moon, which was shot in Pachmari, where he then later on, now he continues to live out of there. So this was sort of the circle he kept, and this is also for me as an archival enthusiast to come across these sort of treasures, and you form a story of a person and their lives. And Pradeep Kishan, of course, as you know, he later on went to change fields. He doesn't associate himself sadly with films anymore, but also did a seminal, reference book on trees of Delhi, which is very different, where photography comes in, not art, but that's a whole different conversation. Okay, so quickly, so what needs to go in a field guide? Like I was saying, I was not really pay attention. As long as the ID was happening, I was happy with that. Probably a lot of us are. But the artist first draws up a list of reference material that he gives to a curator in the museum for him to actually look at a specimen up. So Carl also had to draw up a list like this and give it to BNHS museum collector, although he might have been a staff artist there. So that is sort of mentioned. He's kept papers like that, which is very interesting to know what sort of stuff was happening between them. He also spent similar time. It was good training for him to be in the London Natural History Museum, where he also spent a lot of time. It's very difficult to get in, but because he was working on those field guides for Christopher Hem, he got opportunities there. These are very interesting sets of images. So this is a specimen of a parakeet, right? Who's donated it? When, where it is caught, its scientific name, all of that is mentioned. Very well organized specimen collections these are, and they continue to throw new light even in science, right? But so quickly moving on to these sort of images, there are a few, actually hundreds of them. I'm not very sure why he did that and cut out, but these are the sort of images that went into making the field guide. As you can probably see, these are slightly bigger as compared to the actual ones that later on get illustrated in the field guide. But probably this is the initial stage of illustrating and getting his hands sort of going with each specimen. So if you zoom in, each species is named here, and their differences are sort of marked. So what happens in tracing, the whole process is the artist traces on a drawing paper. From that, he traces onto the tracing paper, and then finally when it's ready, he again traces it back on the drawing paper before it gets to the next stage. This gives you, because of the translucency of a tracing paper, it gives a little more sense of how, what you're going wrong with your shapes and sizes and things like that. So there are many of them of different species, different groups of birds. You can see the roughness here. Some are very rough, but also of different postures and bird ID features that one needs to be aware of. So he's done all of that many times over. This is a good example of the woodpecker family, where again each species is done. But here something interesting happens. You can see some tape marks. So he's done. You can get a sense that he's probably combined two different sets of images to get sort of the corrected version between many iterations. So that's how exacting this work is. It's almost microscopic. I'm sort of stunned that this is sort of the process that goes into. And so you come to the plate stage, where you collate all of these species into a plate, into a sort of a one page. And these are the very initial doodles that he again does to get going, get a sense of what the shapes would be. And you can see some progression. Darker lines follow before they start to become. So different species of birds, you've got to have an understanding of the groups to group together, things like that. So these are lovely plates. You can go through them at your own leisure. We've described each of them. And this is where it starts to become finer. You can notice the difference between the darker lines here and the finer lines here. So they are more advanced versions, and you notice the difference in size. These are slightly bigger, so rougher, earlier iterations where he's getting a sense of the size or the shape rather, and here it starts to become more size oriented because you've got to publish them in a A4, less than A4 size format, right? So these are many iterations of that. Open wingspan, especially eagles, cryptic species, it can go on. And so to end, this is where it starts to get towards the publication. That we've inserted some examples of that before and after, so you can kindly again go through it. I'll quickly go through one example. This is what I was talking of. This is a drawing paper, and then once you've traced them back on a drawing paper, you can get a sense of where still some corrections are needed, and either him or his collaborators, his authors, they would send feedback like that. So that also goes through many exchanges. So this is the before, and that is the after. So the tracing paper to the drawing paper exchange happens. So we've described that as well. So could kindly go through that. Then starts to become finer. Different groups, it becomes a little more closer to publication. The other thing that they have to take in consider is corresponding it to, I don't have a field guide with you, but if there's a field guide, one is a plate and the other is descriptions, right? And so they're numbered. So this numbering happens here, depending on the species. So this is for the spatial arrangement that Carl might have had to do of where which species would go and their distance between them. So it's also aesthetically pleasing to our eye. It's not sort of crowded in, right? So that process happens, and this is the placement, where to place which species according to their size, male, female, adult, juvenile, breeding, non-breeding, whole host of variables that the artist is also keeping in mind. The last stage is some beautiful renditions. He's kept them, and archives, NCBS archives has also sort of scanned them accordingly, even if they are torn. But to us, at least to me, they were absolute treasures to go through, because he had a lot of these sort of feedback and notes mentioned there. But notice the forms now, very sort of close to publication, finer. There are almost every element of the bird is intact, is penciled in. And then, of course, there are still some iterations to go, but he's doing all of that repeatedly. And so this is the family of woodpeckers. There's a nice collection of whole sort of woodpeckers. I don't know, we've got about 18 or so species in the country. So having to do that. And then last couple of correspondences remember he is here in Goa, but the publishers are in England. So he's having to fax them, mail them. It's not email time yet. And he's doing that and getting feedback. And so there's some correspondence with the publisher and some feedback. So again, somebody called Robert Gilmore, he's written back to him saying, okay, this is great, but we need a little more work here and there. And so that's also very nice to go through. Him sending an invoice, and being an artist, of course, he couldn't help but send an invoice on a plate of birds that, this is what I worked on, pay up time, right? Some nice correspondence with the publisher as well. You can go through, it's open. This is the pre-production, almost the final run. This is how they appear. This is from the pheasant's plate. You can see not many red marks and almost good to go, just to get a sense of how it is looking in color. And finally, these are the plates that get done. His signature CDS is on, so if you look at the Inskip guide, CDS, wherever it's written, those are Carl's plates, right? And so he did several of them. The cranes, you can probably imagine the earlier versions and this version, very finished. Hornbills as well, kingfishers, right? And so Carl, like I was mentioning, had a wide circle. A lot of people knew him, even photographers knew him. And so this is, you might have heard of T.N.A. Perumal, who also passed away, the wildlife photographer from South India. And apparently Barbara told me that they sort of just, they happened to be in the field at the same time. Of course, exchanged pleasantries and both knew of each other. So Perumal was happy to take a photo with Carl, not the other way around. That's it. This is a very interesting quirk. Just because you're Goa based, this is for a resort up north that he worked on, a Pegasus model. As you know, resort people, they like to sort of go over the top. And so this gentleman wanted a Pegasus sort of lifelike models, and Carl sort of did them in POP and other materials. So just shows a wide range of sort of material that Carl was able to play with. It was very sort of adventurous, and he just went for it. And this is his sort of, even for his visiting card, there was sort of some sort of exchange that happened. So that's about that. Before Abhisheka comes on, thank you very much again. Kindly, we encourage you to go through the exhibit and read some of these descriptions. This is just a snippet. There is more on the NCBS Archives website. But thank you again for your time, and this has been very enriching to go through Carl's papers. Yeah, thank you.
I now request Joyce to present Vrushal with a small token of appreciation from GBCN. I now invite Madhura to introduce our guest speaker for the day.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming today, and I'm sure you guys must have really enjoyed looking at all of Carl's work. And now I think those of us who have been around for all 10 or many of the years that this event is happening actually understand how valuable Carl's contribution was and how important it is to have this lecture every year. So today we have with us Abhisheka Krishnagopal, who is going to do the Carl da Silva lecture, and I have the privilege of introducing her. I know Abhisheka since 2008. We were working together in the same organization. So I'm going to first read a little bit because she has a long bio, and I'll try not to take too long. But yeah, she's actually an artist, an ecologist, and an educator, all rolled into one, and mostly doing conservation work through her medium, which is art. And she's trained in fine arts and painting, ecology and the environment, and a conservation leadership at the University of Cambridge. That's where she studied. And she, over the past decade, she has worked in wildlife rehabilitation, bird migration research, nature education with organizations like AITRI, BNHS, and the Nature Conservation Foundation, where she works now. And she currently manages a project called the Early Bird Project. Many of you might know about it, where they do a lot of work for promoting awareness about birds and bird conservation. So of late, she now leads a large-scale initiative which introduces nature education to nearly 6,000 libraries across the state of Karnataka. In this effort, the librarians are equipped with art and games to engage children in learning about birds and the natural world. She has co-authored the Handbook for Bird Educators, which if you haven't seen it, you must see it. It's a really lovely book. It's so handy, it is so useful. It is for people to use it as a guide to teach children or anybody about birds. And so her background is visual arts, and so she says she creates experiences that inspire emotional connections with nature and motivate conservation action. Although this is not in her bio, I want to say a couple things about her. And so having known her for a while, as a child she was very interested in nature and animals and things like that, and so that is something which drew her to rehabilitation of birds. And you should talk to her later. She's actually reared owls and rehabilitated animals by becoming their real mother. So putting things, gloves in her hand and feeding them and really taking care of these animals. And that's why she knows them so well, that she's able to do illustrations, do ecology work and all of that. And one thing which is not mentioned in her bio is that she is also a very talented dancer, and she was part of a large contemporary dance event called How to Be a Fig, and it was performed at, it was a large event, many performers, many dancers in it, and it was performed at the Student Conservation Science Conference for Conservation Science in Bangalore and several other places later. The actual I don't know what it's called, the performance is actually a science and art combined thing, which shows how a ficus or a fig tree really contributes to becoming to everything in nature. So everything from the fig to how it holds seed, how it becomes a strangler fig, how it grows, and all the animals it supports, hornbills, squirrels, birds, everything shown by dance, through dance. So that's an amazing thing. We were trying to get it for Serendipity once, the Serendipity Art Festival, which happens here in December, but we didn't manage to get it that time. But so that's Abhisheka for you, and today she's going to talk about this. So I welcome Abhisheka.
Thank you, Madhura. Thanks to Madhura and Omkar, Parag, and everybody at GBCN for inviting me to this event. Goa is special to me in many ways because I have so many friends here, and also I think it's one of those places where they are at the forefront of bringing together art, ecology, and conservation compared to many other cities in the country. Also talking about, I do come from a time where we didn't really have too many resources to learn about bird illustration, and just to share a bit about how I got into this. So I was studying fine arts. I was studying to become a visual artist when I got interested. I started volunteering with the Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation Center as a student, and that was the first time I realized that even in a city like Bangalore, there's so much wildlife. And it also kind of opened me up to the fact that the kind of rapid development that was going on in the city was actually destroying a whole lot of wildlife, because we were constantly working with hundreds of injured and abandoned birds and snakes and mongoose and jackals and all kinds of urban wildlife. And so naturally my college works shifted to most of the artworks that I did at college were about the kind of distress that wild animals were going through. And I got really interested in, that was also a time when actually we didn't really have so much of access to internet, no smartphones, no books available about anything to do with nature illustrations. But then a couple of senior ornithologists in Bangalore did try telling me, and you must have also heard, many of you must have heard of Sangeeta Kadur. We were studying in the same college, and both of us were interested in wildlife and birding, and so they were kind of trying to tell us about bird illustrations. And so that's when, Salim Ali's field guide was all that we had. And I remember, because in a fine arts college, they don't train you to do nature illustrations or bird illustrations. It's very conceptual and abstract art. And I remember, going through Carl's illustrations in such detail, figuring out, how he sketched these birds and painted these birds and trying to recopy, and until such time that I could get some access to learning how to illustrate birds, some books and access. So naturally for me, Carl was a great inspiration. I think he was the first person that I know of as a bird illustrator, given that at that time I didn't have much access to what was happening in the Western world. So I feel privileged to be from being this young student who was trying to learn from his illustrations, to be able to come to his memorial event and give a talk about bird conservation. I think I really feel very honored to be here, and so GBCN, thank you for that. So since the topic is about art, I would like the visuals to do more of the talking than me. So I would want you to experience what is on screen, and I'll try to give a bit of introduction about what I'm trying to show, but it's going to be more of visuals. Let's start with this video.
We all share a special bond with birds. Birds charm and captivate us. But perhaps more importantly, they inspire us. In the epics and legends of cultures around the world, birds often play an important role. They find their way into all our languages in sayings, idioms, and analogies. In these stories, birds are described as having human-like motivations and personalities. Our visual art is full of birds, conveying different stories and different moods. No wonder birds have been used by commercial brands worldwide in their names and logos. The songs of birds have inspired poetry, music, and folklore. Imagine a world without birds. Imagine our art and culture devoid of birds. It's unthinkable. May birds forever thrive in our hearts and minds, and in the real world too.
Yeah, this was a video from one of the course that we have developed called the Wonder of Bird course, and it's a free online course that anybody can take up. So as we see in the video, birds have always been a big part of human civilization, and across culture, across the world, we see birds being depicted in every other culture, whether it is through art or stories. Just to take few examples here, you might see birds being depicted in temple architecture or stupas, and also a lot of folklore. For example, the Varli art here is depicting a village scene, but then you can notice how birds are part of their everyday life. They're shown the weaver bird nest here, and that's an example of Ustad Mansoor Ali's Mughal miniature artwork. Actually, if you zoom in, there are several birds in that painting. So he's really done such detailed illustrations, and the way he has actually looked at birds and illustrated this miniature artwork. I don't know how much you can notice, but there are a lot of birds. And then when it comes to, so in the past, as you have already noticed, birds were either imagined, or especially with the sculpture that you noticed from a temple architecture, maybe they didn't depict realistic birds, but they imagined, they came up with imaginary birds. But later years, there were attempts made to actually document the birds around us. And one such attempt was during Shah Jahan as well as Akbar's court. So they hired a lot of Mughal miniatures artists to kind of document the birds around us. So we have a lot of these Mughal miniatures, where especially by Ustad Mansoor, who has tried to paint birds as realistic as possible. And then later on, during British, so they hired a lot of watercolor artists to document the birds, and that's how we have the company paintings, thanks to which we kind of have an understanding of what kind of birds were present during those days. Now let us think a bit about contemporary art, and how contemporary art is also influencing awareness about birds and conservation. Now what I want you to do is just look at this painting for a few seconds. Do not try to analyze it too much about what they're trying to show, or what the colors. Just think of what do you feel when you look at this artwork. Just give yourself a few seconds and just take a look at it, and how does it make you feel. So this is a large-scale artwork by this very well-known contemporary artist called Prabhakar Pachpate, who kind of through his art, he shows how coal mining has been destroying biodiversity. Okay, now since Madhura did mention about how to be the fig dance, I have a video, a small clip of that performance. So I would like you to take a look at this piece, which has a sequence about birds. those were yes. So yeah, the nice thing about this performance was that we just put out a call for volunteers. Anybody who loved trees and nature could come and participate. So there were 23 of us, and most of them were not dancers. The person you saw who was the hornbill, she's the choreographer. She was the only one trained in ballet and all that. The rest of them were researchers, engineers, homemakers. Some of them who had never stepped onto a stage, and she did work with different body types and still made it a great performance. So what I wanted you to think of again watching this video is how did it make you feel, than really thinking logically. Just focus on how did you feel. So these are some examples, and here is another. I'm just trying to show a few different art forms here. So this is another prints of birds, and Bruce Pearson is a very well-known artist who's well-known globally. He's quite old now, and in fact one of his books called The Migration, the artist something to do with migration was quite well known. It's a really old book where he followed the migratory birds, and he's one of those artists who just sketched from the field. He just kept following birds through their migratory routes all the way to Africa, and then kept sketching, and the whole book is about his his findings as well as his sketches. And so for those of you who are not familiar with printmaking, this is basically wood or a sheet called lino sheet, which is more like a rubber sheet, and it's carved through it, and then ink is applied, and then prints are taken. So these are some of examples from that. And this is another one of my favorite artists, sculptor Harriet Mead. She's based in the UK. She just collects scrap, and her studio is really tiny, like a tiny, she lives in a remote village in the UK, and just like a storeroom kind of place, and then whatever metal, wherever she finds, she just collects them, and then she makes these beautiful wildlife sculptures. And Malcolm Green, he's a storyteller, and again he's quite old, and he came up with this musical story about the pied cuckoo and its migration, and he and his son went around the UK, actually traveled through the countryside, just camping and gathering people, and like telling stories out in the outdoors. And so that's called the Gone Cuckoo Project. And this is an artist from, right now based in Calcutta, but he's originally from Shantiniketan. And these are natural dyes on cotton textile. And this is another way of how his, art can be used to depict birds. It doesn't really have to be very real, photorealistic. But these are various forms of how contemporary artists have been using art. Isn't this beautiful on a textile? So these are some of the ways in which art can be used for bird conservation or awareness. And now let's look at how it's being currently used in education and awareness programs by different conservation institutes or individuals. Again, it's such a vast field that what I am showing today is just a really tiny part of what actually is happening in the country or around the world. Again, Madhura spoke about the Bird Educator's Handbook, and the reason I thought I'll speak about it is, one, whenever we come up with a book, I think illustration makes a lot of difference to the way how audience engage with it, than using very layouts which are very squarish or photographs. So we every time we come up with a publication, we try to use a lot of illustration. So we do work with a lot of artists. And then the other thing about this book is there's an entire chapter on creative activities, because teaching either children or beginners about birds, we feel apart from sharing factual knowledge about birds, it's also important to engage them in games and creative activities. And so there's an entire chapter about that. And this is just a sample of one of the activities where teachers have used just different patterns to learn about a forest wagtail. And this is another friend of mine who's Russian but who studied in India. She had studied in Kalabhavan in Shantiniketan. And so art can also be just used for documenting. Again, it doesn't have to be very scientific documentation, but these are documentations that she has done just seeing birds around her. In fact, the first the painting of the magpie robin is from my house when she came and stayed with me. This was a robin which used to always hang around outside in my garden, and she just quickly painted this robin. And the owl is from Shantiniketan while she was studying. So whatever she saw around her, she would just document them the way they are. And this is Pichandikulam, headed by another very talented researcher and artist, Eric Ramanujam, who's no more now. He's another senior artist I really looked up to. And so he trained a lot of people who would paint banners in the villages. He trained them to do this wildlife art, large-scale wildlife art. And then these are discarded kadapa stones, and they would just get these and paint them and put them on the roadside or at school campuses. And that was one way of introducing biodiversity through artwork. And this is Eric Ramanujam's illustration. So he has made several of these posters. Again, many of them were from his scientific observation and studies. Not moving. Yeah, so this is the library project, one of the projects that I'm leading right now. So what we do is, again, we feel children should be introduced to the world of birds with a lot of fun and creativity. And so the librarians, these are rural librarians, close to 6,000 librarians in Karnataka, have been trained to draw birds. So they try to learn how to draw realistic birds so that they can encourage kids to go out and sketch birds as well as practice nature journaling. The other thing is we also teach the librarians how to write simple poetry, so that they can also encourage children to express themselves and what they see around them in nature. And so we've also developed activity sheets which the children have used to learn about birds. And then I would also like to show one example of how art science can come together to reach out to the public. But because I think while scientists are conducting so much of research and there's so much knowledge that's been gathered, and it's really important to find a very engaging way to bring that information to the public. And sometimes a lot of institutions don't really collaborate, but I think it is really important to reach out to many different art institutes. It's not just, so this is one example of how we collaborated with the Indian Music Experience Museum in Bangalore, and we came up with an exhibit called Bird Song, where we were like, the early bird was the knowledge partner, and they brought in the music expertise, and this is just a glimpse into how the exhibition looks. realization is that as a scientific institution, there was no way we would have reached out to the music crowd. And here there were like the audience who came to watch this exhibition. There were musicians, there were scientists, and so we could exchange each other's knowledge and understanding, because a lot of people from the scientific background didn't have an understanding of how birds have also influenced the classical ragas in the Indian classical ragas. So they were learning things like that, and it was a very interactive exhibition because there were a lot of videos that people could watch and listen. And we also had an interactive something called as the bird boxing, where audience could actually create music using bird calls as well as the music. So that was a big hit during the exhibit. Okay, so these were some of the examples of creating awareness and education, but now let's look at how art helps with emotional connection to birds. Now again, I want you to just watch some of these images and just give some time to think about how these artworks make you feel. So Jane is a sculptor, and she actually worked on this project called the Red List, where she made ceramic sculptures of all the birds that were red listed. And yeah, one of the feedback, because I was interviewing some of these artists to understand like how do they look at their how do they when do they feel that their artwork has made an impact? Like are there any very visible incidents that they can share where because we can create an artwork, but does it really have an impact, especially when it's something to do with a social cause or an environmental cause? So one of the incidents she shared was that she said that there have been people who have just stood there watching these sculptures and just shed tears, because like the number of birds, when they realize the number of deaths, so that's one of the impact of this artwork. So here's another image, and she also tagged those birds. So Chris Wallbank, he is another artist who has worked with a scientist called Tim Burkhead to document these guillemots. So he goes to the breeding colony and he sits there with this like huge scroll of paper, and then he sketches hundreds and thousands of these birds on the spot. So he never, like, it's not like they don't photograph and come back to the studio and work on it, but this is how he sits there and sketches these birds. So I was asking him, once you take a look at this, I want to show you another image. So here you can see some of the details. They're very alive. You know, these birds, if you see the sketches, they're actually in action. So he actually told me about this incident where he had displayed this scroll in a church. And then one of the caretaker of the church, initially when he walked in, he said, he was like kind of irritated looking at this scroll. He's like, what is this? What has been displayed here? And then I believe he went close to the scroll and started looking at the detail, and then he realized these are birds. And at some spots, there are actually, Chris Wallbank has shown the chicks trying to take their first flight. They're sitting on the edge of the cliff and they have to like fall into the sea. And this person who was the caretaker of the church, interpreted that in his own way. For him it was like the faith that these chicks had about life, and so he interpreted it in a very spiritual way, and found his own meaning with his artwork. So what Chris was trying to tell me was that for him, he creates this art and puts it out there, but different individual can interpret that in a different way. He doesn't need to explain to them what he has tried to do, and that's one of the ways of how art can connect to people. So I would like you to take a look at this picture and try to see what all has been depicted there. So you see a sparrowhawk and a lot of debris. So basically, Derek actually has spent a lot of time in places like Jordan in refugee camps. He depicts, he brings together migration of both birds and humans, and also depicts how climate change is impacting human migration. So most of his works there are where he's trying to depict these beautiful birds, but with the background of the kind of destruction that he was seeing in these areas. And so I was talking to Derek and trying to again ask the same question, that how does art does it really make an impact? Because this is more of violence and things like that. So, and then he was also teaching refugee kids from the who have lost their countries and who have lost their parents, and they're just in this refugee camp, and all of a sudden they've just turned into adults because they have to take care of themselves. And he told me a very nice incident where he said these kids form groups because they just try to hold on to each other and become friends because they don't have families, while they walked like no idea how many kilometers to reach these refugee camps, and they're scared and trying to survive, trying to understand life. And but he said, as soon as my question was, when these kids their life is like suddenly fallen apart, and how does when you try to get these kids to make art, how does it are they even interested in doing art when they've lost their families and parents and siblings? And so what he said was that he would sit there in the refugees camp. He wouldn't force any children to paint or sketch, but he would just sit and paint. And then slowly the kids would start walking towards him, and he would just quietly give them papers and colors. And slowly they all would start adding things and start drawing. And he said at that moment, from being these adults, they would turn back to being children. They would suddenly find happiness in that, in creating art. They would suddenly forget that, they've gone through this terrible issues. So that for me was very heartwarming, knowing that, even in a moment of crisis, that still art can bring so much happiness, even if it's for a momentary happiness, but still art can make such a big difference to these children. Conservation action, I think I don't need to speak too much about this, because Goa has been using a lot of art in their campaigns and activism. There's a lot of artwork being done here. And then another example I thought I'll show is about Purnima Burman, who's trying to save the greater adjutant stocks. So here, these women who call themselves the Hargila Army, they go around, they use theatre to go around building awareness about these stocks. as well as if you see their the cloth, the mekla, the wraparound dress that they wear, they've actually embroidered the stocks in these, as well as the towel that the men use, which they call it the ghamcha. Even there they have this bird embroidery. So that I thought was a very innovative way of sharing about these birds through textile and art. Now, why is art so powerful? So as we know, it's not just giving out information, but it really connects hearts and minds, and also breaks the barrier of language. Like just like what Derek said, when he was working in the refugee camp, most of the kids didn't speak the language that he spoke, but there was a very quiet communication. They didn't need to use words. And this is something I personally have experienced, because when I work in some of these remote regions in the country where whether it's northeast, where I can't speak the local language, and I feel that art big role in breaking these language barriers, where you just have to show things and kids start working around it, and you don't really have to explain things. And again, translating science into feelings. So one of the example was the fig dance. So fig, we actually took the story of the fig, the ecological importance of the fig, and that was shown through movement. So there was feeling there. Science suddenly turned into something that people can emotionally connect to. And I leave you with this question, that if you, I think each of us can really make a change by using whether poetry or art or whatever you're comfortable with. But a question to you is, is there a bird that you would like to draw attention to? If so, what art form would you like to use? Thank you.
Draw attention to this Kabutar Khana issue, which is a big issue in Bombay, where they want to close feeding these feral pigeons. And will it not be possible for artists like you to go there and explain what bad things these feral pigeons can do to people, and explain to them, that see, that is how this is now. It has nothing to do with religion. You should stop this feeding feral pigeons, and bring out something drastic in our culture, because people think that by feeding they are doing some work and going straight to heaven, and that I think we should tell them that they are bringing hell into the earth by doing this.
I would say that what I was trying to say through this talk is that I think each of us are artists, and we should each of us find our way of expressing our concerns through art. So I think just expecting some artists to create awareness, it's going to be it's going to burden them a lot, because there are so few artists in the country who are working for conservation, and expecting them to take on all the causes, environmental causes, is going to be a bit challenging for them. So if each of us can do something about this, and can use whatever art forms that we are comfortable with, I think we can make a better impact.
Because right now that's a burning issue.
I wanted to know a little bit more about the work that you're doing with the libraries.
Okay.
Why did you choose librarians particularly and not teachers in classrooms?
Okay. So we initially used to work with a lot of teachers, and librarians, I must, the credit has to go to one of the IAS officers in Karnataka, who's Uma Mahadevan, who's the additional chief secretary of rural development. So what she did was, during COVID time, when rural kids had no access to schools, she revived these libraries, which were until then most of them were not functional. So she revived 6,000 libraries in Karnataka, and these libraries were equipped with books and computers And then when we heard about this project, we thought, okay, maybe we should give it a try and ask if we can use these spaces to introduce nature education. And we just met her, and I mean, she was quite happy with the content we had because we did carry all our games and activities. And she said, go ahead and introduce. So initially we started with a pilot of 500 libraries, because this was the first time that we were working with librarians, and because teachers are in some way trained to teach, and also but librarians are not. Apart from giving away books, they're not used to engaging with children or working with children. So for us also, we had to figure out whether this is something that we can do. And so we started with 500 libraries, and so we had to really simplify our material, our teaching methods, because most of the librarians have only finished the 10th standard. So you can't have too much theory. It all had to be done through art and other activities. And then we saw the result within a month, where during summer they're supposed to do summer workshops, and they were doing bird themed workshops. They were coming up, they were trying to use their own crafts to create birds, and then keeping out water bowls. And so Uma Mahadevan was so impressed by the impact that she said, okay, take it to all 6,000 librarians. So last year we actually designed a module, like a 3-phase module, because we realized it will be too much for them if we train them all at once. And the way we did the training was, the government selected one librarian per taluk, so we trained them as master trainers, and then they went and trained the other taluk level librarians. That was what we completed last year, but this year I'm going district wise, trying to train them, and we have created this nice education kit that we have given to all the librarians. We did a crowdfunding campaign and managed to raise money to donate these kits to the libraries. And now we are training the librarians to just use this kit, which has a lot of art activities and games. Yeah.
So these are mostly in rural areas?
Yes, they're all Gram Panchayat libraries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And have you been seeing any other states replicating this model based on what you've been?
Not really, at least not with nature education. The other states, I feel, I think Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, they're trying to introduce into schools system. So we're trying to work again. We've been having talks with the Tamil Nadu government to see if we can introduce in schools. But the problem with schools is teachers are burdened with syllabus, and they're like, we already have so much to cover, there's academic pressure, and where do we find time for these other activities? So at least with librarians, that pressure is not there, so it's much more easier to work with.
And I feel like, important as this is in rural areas, it's slightly more important in urban areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the disconnect with nature in the urban areas is much more stark as compared to, because rural areas is still kind of surrounded by.
Yeah, they're surrounded by, but then, given the modern education system, they've lost touch with their surroundings, which is a really sad thing. They're losing that kind of traditional knowledge that they had. That's why we felt this was important. Yes, urban areas, definitely it's important, but I don't know about other cities, I can't speak for other cities, but at least Bangalore, there are many nature educators who are working in the urban landscape, so we felt like we need to reach out to the rural audience.
So I wanted to ask you, as an artist who has been working with visual art and paintings and stuff like that for so long, and now the young generations, everyone is mostly working with photography, videos, reels and things like that. So you can't remain in the back doing things like this only, but one has to adapt. So for the young people who are trying to learn about nature, maybe taking a quick video and then sending it to somebody and saying, please ID this for me or whatever, has become the norm.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to somebody who's like, we have a bunch of youngsters in our bird conservation network, they come to our bird walks and activities, and do you have any thoughts on any suggestions for them as to how they would sort of learn or know more about birds through art forms, anything that you would recommend? Because I'm just saying what is happening now is very different from what.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean during when we engage with children, that's what one thing we tell them is ID is fine. You're learning something about the bird. They'll be just learning to identify them or about the behavior. But I think to deeply feel for that, you need to really spend time with these birds, which I feel a lot of people don't seem to do these days. Everything is, even artists that way. So many artists now draw just from photographs. They don't want to go out and spend time observing birds in the field and their behavior. I mean, social media has its own advantages, but then also this quick, what is the word? Instant gratification that they get, that their artwork is fine, kind of is pushing a lot of people to just work from photographs. So one of the nature journaling is something I use a lot to get youngsters as well as adults, even with librarians, for example. They're always on the phone because they're just used to, looking at the screen, and this whole thing of staying quiet and focusing on something is lost. And so I push them to do nature journaling so that they really calm down and forget about all that is happening around them and forget the phone and focus. And I mean that's very important for both their not just the emotional connection with nature, for their own well-being. I mean, there's more and more research showing that the more time you spend with nature, as well as a combination of art and nature is wonderful for your mental health. So I mean, it will be really nice if youngsters can spend time in the field. And art doesn't have to be again this thing of only trained artists or somebody who can draw well can do art. Is something that people should get over. I think everybody is an artist. For example, one of the folk art, the pattern, the activity that we give, what has happened is a lot of us, especially children in schools, are compared based on how well they can copy a drawing. So we judge them saying that you can draw or you can't draw, and then they grow up thinking that we don't have the talent to draw. So we try and give these kind of creative activities, whether it's working with paper or working with natural materials or just drawing patterns, where they can express themselves, and there you can't really judge who is good or who is bad. It's their own way of expressing themselves through this art form. So through nature journaling, I try to encourage that they don't have to really always draw, but if you're uncomfortable drawing, just use collage. Just use whatever material or medium you can to express yourself, but go out and observe what is in nature and just express yourself for your own self. It doesn't always have to be for the world to see. Yes.
Thank you for such a nice presentation, and compliments for all your work.
Thank you.
From a government executive points of view, I wanted to know where would art as a tool for conservation be more impactful? I'm not talking about students, society at large. Whether in urban areas it's more impactful or in rural areas.
I think art is impactful in all areas. It cannot be really, we can't really differentiate between urban and rural there, because art is something, like I said, it slows down people and it helps them go into their own self-reflection, and I think that is important for all. Yes, yeah. Because also in the current world, I feel even rural areas, like especially working with librarians, I've realized that even rural areas, given that mobile phone and the access to internet in the most remote corners have gotten people into their handset, their gadget, and they're not able to go out and appreciate what is around them, which is really sad.
I'm also a teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
Not in the school, but I want to give credit to the fact that you have taken this art to the village children and not to just the affluent children in the cities. I wish other states also would do this to the village children. And please convey our credit and compliments to the Chief Secretary who has done this. Without her consent, you would not have been able to go this far.
I totally agree. I mean, she's so inspiring. I wish we had many more, bureaucrats like that. Yeah.
Please convey this to her if you need her.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I'm so glad you brought out this point, because even while working with the librarians, they do tell us neither did they have art classes in their schools, nor the children that they're engaging with art have art classes. So they get so they're excited when they're drawing birds. In the beginning, they'll be like, we've never drawn, I don't think we can draw, how can we draw a bird? But the end of the workshop, when they see their own artworks, they're just so excited about what they've come up with. So these workshops with librarians are really fun because they turn into children themselves.
Following up on the point that you just made, I wanted to ask you personally, for you, having trained in art and then eventually in conservation sciences, do you think your training in art has made you a better on the field as a scientist or as a conservation person? Has it helped that in some way?
Yes, definitely. In fact, so initially it helped professionally. For example, when I was working as a researcher, and then I started when I also realized there were not enough. I'm talking about 2008, when there were not enough engaging resource materials on, say, certain taxa, say snakes or amphibians in Karnataka, in Kannada. Then I felt the need to develop materials, and so art came in handy because I could illustrate than having to reach out to anybody else and explain what was in my head. I could just do this myself. A similar thing with the dance project, because I had this idea that we need to bring out other forms to talk about science. And the nice thing about the dance choreography is it's not like this friend Veena, she didn't choreograph the whole piece. Each of us had to come up with our own sequence. She just stitched things together and refined it. So we were all part of the choreography. And definitely art that way has helped. And now I also see that I can also bring in a different perspective while thinking about conservation. So definitely, yeah.
I have a question. I'm wondering that with so much of photography and all that, where species are photographed, all angles and all, why do some of these great handbooks and all still, I just want your perspective, still opt for these plates of artists
because,
and not photographs?
Yeah, because whatever angle you take, you do bird photography, you still cannot show the entire bird through a photograph. So that's when, because artists have the ability to see if you're an artist who has studied the birds in the field, their behavior and sketched different patterns, so they know how to depict a bird in an angle that can show the entire feature of the bird, which photography definitely cannot. And also, that's what I also tell artists when they copy photographs, when they make sketches copying photograph, that you cannot directly copy photos to make your sketches, because the angles are all wrong, the proportions change. So that's one of the reasons, illustrations are very important to depict the proportionately. And hope I'm not gone beyond time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Your session reminded me of a quotation I had read many years ago. It is a quotation by Leonardo da Vinci. He says, "Art is a daughter of nature. Art is the queen of all sciences, communicating knowledge to all generations of the world." Something which was very apt for this particular session. Everything you learn is through art. I would like to request our president, Omkar, to present ma'am with a token of appreciation. I now invite Mabel Menezes to propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. As we come to the close of this year Carl da Silva Memorial Lecture, it is my privilege to express our gratitude on behalf of Goa Bird Conservation Network. First and foremost, a very special thanks to you, Mrs. Barbara da Silva, Carl's wife, whose presence with us today makes this gathering even more meaningful. We are deeply grateful to the Institute Menezes Braganza for providing us the venue and all this arrangement. A heartfelt thanks to our guest speaker, Ms. Abhisheka, for her enriching valuable insight and for graciously accepting our invite. Sincere thanks to Vrushal for curating the virtual exhibition. A warm appreciation also goes out to Pooja Subhash and Omkar Darwadkar for their creativity and hard work in designing the online gallery that beautifully showcased Carl's art and vision. To the entire GBCN organizing committee, thank you for your tireless efforts and dedication in bringing this event together. To our caterers, thank you for your service and support. And finally, to each and every one of you present here this evening, your presence and encouragement means the world to us. You make this gathering truly special. As we carry forward Carl legacy, may we also carry with us the inspiration to celebrate, protect and share the beauty of nature in our own ways. Thank you and have a great evening ahead.